volunteer teacher of Hinduism and Buddhism, and in the middle and high schools, and a lifelong practitioner of Sanatan Dharma. That's another name for Hinduism. He has a master's degree in computer science and is one of the founding members of a book club called Tirumurai. It meets bi-weekly and is dedicated to the practice and research of Rishi Tirumular's teachings. He also founded an organization for the advancement of Murugan worship and is called Tirumugatrupadai. He is associated with several organizations such as Ekal Vidyalaya, Seva International, and Samskrita Bharat. He is a student of Pasupat Shaiva tradition at Vimarsha Foundation. He attends regular Dharma services at the Sri Krishna Temple in Newbury and the Shilai Buddhist Temple in Hacienda Heights, and All World Gayatri Parivar Temple in Buena Park. Let's give a round of applause for him.
I'm hoping that this automatically detects. And
And the TV turned off.
No,
No, don't touch that dot. No, this is fine, this one, you're right.
okay.
Is there any evidence in the house?
Okay, something is working.
Netflix.
Understand the context of the whole event and how the audience is going to receive.
Is that you, Kari?
No,
I
that's
didn't think so.
something to do over HDMI or input source.
Yeah, you don't have to, where is it?
Me.
It should be a book, I don't know.
Well, you're on my script again.
It's not
This
there.
goes
Paul?
We have some help coming.
Okay.
This is
Hey,
our
Lacey.
activity, this is our activities director. We had it working with Mason.
I've just been so
Yeah,
ill.
really.
12:56.
Give it to, there you go.
Source.
Oops.
Source.
PC.
Got it?
Feel like nothing will go into my head anymore. So we ran this exercise to help people.
Wow.
One more over.
Lacey can help you. She's right here. She knows this machine.
Lacey,
Thank you.
how we got it?
So now I think I need to still do this or
That'll
something.
probably just disappear on its own.
It will, yeah.
Yeah, it does. Okay. Okay, welcome everyone. I am going to not get into trouble with Terry, so I'm going to put my own timer. Okay. So as you see, I have put my own title that will be a loose approximation on how my tradition can look at this question, do dogs go to heaven? Because the definition of heaven is different, and I am extrapolating one animal species, dogs, into all living beings, and then asking myself, who achieves moksha? Moksha is the highest state of liberation in Sanatana Dharma. Nirvana will be a Buddhist equivalent, approximate equivalent. But who there is not just humans or pets, in broader sense dogs, but everything. That's the premise I'm coming in. And Hinduism, as you might have all known with my previous talks or other Hindu talks, is a tons of variation. I'm trying to give the basic denomination for all the traditions that is currently called Hinduism and trying to find an answer here. So very quickly, I'm going to talk about like Sanatana Dharma that I represent is approximately called Hinduism. There are a lot of spiritual traditions, and generally we define the cosmic consciousness, the divinity, truth is one, and paths within Sanatana Dharma are many. We acknowledge the key word is cyclical universe, where it is not like going back to the title, a dog or any pet or human is linearly gets birth and goes to heaven, I cannot answer that question, but I have to answer it in a more cyclical universe that I am familiar with, my tradition believes in. Birth, death, rebirth, dogs go through it, humans go through it, and it's eternally applicable spirituality, and the whole world, including everything from insects to humans, or even, God knows, something above humans, are all one family. So given this basic thing, I wanted to introduce quickly 3 or 4 words, then I will come to the question and answer it. There is a specific reason why this picture was chosen. You see, maybe look at it as a Pacific island and an island, Pacific Ocean, and there is a tree here. The seed for this tree got carried away by the cloud, by storms, by whatever water, it floated away from the neighboring continent, but somehow the life got hold on it. It had its own life. It might have blossomed, it might have given its own seeds, and the seeds in turn might have dispersed. But this cycle, called samsara in Sanskrit, is fundamental to Hindus, Buddhists, and Jains, but I'm going to focus on Hinduism here, where this cycle again gets applicable to dogs and humans or any other life forms. So given this picture, that samsara, keep the word there in your mind, then we come into the concept of karma, where every action has an equivalent reaction. That's a very simplified way of saying it. There's a lot more nuance, meaning to it, but fundamentally it is getting everybody accountable to it. Now, if a tiger, not a dog, if a tiger kills a deer for its food, is it bad karma? Some theologians within Hindu tradition will say no, because that is the duty of the tiger. But if the deer in turn becomes a carnivore and start killing people, then it's a different story. It's not in its nature to kill. Deer is supposed to eat a herbivorous diet. But when you come to living beings or the higher consciousness, then the fact that we have the ability to discriminate good versus evil gives us more responsibility and more probability of success in the eventual path, which is the next slide, where I'm not saying moksha here is equivalent to heaven, but this is the ultimate goal of Sanatana Dharma, where it's not explicable by a human language, by a human being, but generally it is absolute truth, pure consciousness and endless bliss is the approximate equivalent of moksha. Even different traditions of Hinduism has a different meaning of what is moksha and what happens then. I'm not going into that. That's for even humans, but we will worry about dogs in the next slide. So we have samsara, we have karma, and we have moksha. Mixing it all together to the previous, the tree in the Pacific island here, its karma, its actions from its level of a living being cannot be equated to, let us say, even a dog was also somehow the humans, or somehow it swam here. It might have its own life, its own karma. A human living in the same island might have the same thing. But what they do in their life defines the samsara, the rebirth. Now, to put it all mildly, I will quickly look, time check. Yeah, it's good time. So the broader framework of dharma, Sanatana Dharma, but generally harmonious conduct in one word. You have countless births, innumerable. Every, whether it's a dog or an insect or even an amoeba or a human or a superhuman, they do their own artha to make their life comfortable. They also have the continuation of species or whatever they feel is good for them during that lifetime. And eventually every living being dies, even the stars die. When you look at stars as some entities. But then the cycle continues as per Hindu tradition. But if within the construct of dharma, if you do certain actions, you achieve what is called getting out of jail. I used to tell my kids, it's in Hindu terms, it's moksha, where you get out of the life and death cycle. Now, I'm going to introduce these two not similar, same word, Swargaloka, which is approximately equivalent to a heaven. And Swargaloka, I am purposely saying it's not moksha. Swargaloka is something which is in multiple stages of where after death or in between births, a Hindu framework gives you an opportunity to enjoy the fruits of your action, and once it is depleted, think of it as a bank account. Once it is done, you come back and earn again. But if you earn debt, then you go down the chain of consciousness. But if you have more positive karma, you go up the chain. So dogs, humans, everybody follows the same rule. Now, who achieves liberation? There is a clean distinction we make between Atma, which I will talk, and the organic body. Whether it's dog's body or a human body, my pet's body, or whatever bacteria in my gut, which is hanging along and having a good life based on the food I eat. Everything that my body here is, that is not me. Atma for us is different. This organic body does not go to any heaven. This physical body, whether it's for dog or humans or anything in between, or lesser or higher, whatever we think. But the Atma takes, like just as if my shirt is kind of old, I just threw it out and get a new shirt. Atma, once the body reaches its physical limitations, 120 years or more, or less, based on the karma again, it takes a new body. The Atma though, once it achieves moksha, then it's a different story. Now, the objective of life is not to achieve the intermediate Swargaloka or heaven here, but here is the gist of my answer to the question. The higher the consciousness of a living being, from a single-celled amoeba to humans, superhumans who never know, when you look at the probability of achieving moksha, it's higher, because the more consciousness you have, the more discriminatory power you have on what is good and bad. But going to my example of a tiger cannot be dinged with bad karma because it keeps killing, but it's its nature to kill. Its body is designed for killing. It's not bad karma. Humans, if let us say we all live in Arctic and 6 months of bitter cold, nothing grows, and you kill your reindeer stock and then eat it, that's not bad karma. That is your survival. But if you are living in a very lush environment where you have opportunity to have plenty of food, but you still mindlessly kill, then it is bad karma. I'm oversimplifying it here. So humans though are having higher consciousness and higher responsibility, and higher chances of getting moksha, higher chances of falling down too. Dogs though, there are plenty of examples in our scriptures, in our collective civilizational history, where people have been known to refuse to go to Swargaloka, not moksha, Swargaloka, because their opportunity to enter that kind of higher state of bliss was only deemed for them, not for their, let us say, their pet. Then another example is, and the person, the king refused, saying, I want my dog also to come with me for Swargaloka, for enjoying the bliss of good deeds. Then I also wanted to talk about, like all over Hinduism, the symbolism of the deities is closely associated with their vahana, or the vehicle in which the deity is to be understood. And none other than, I will take an example, Bhairava is another deity which is very famous for having a black dog as the vahana. The deity is famous for giving protection to spaces, to kshetra, to spaces. So there, it's not just the deity, but the dog, the vehicle of the deity is already there in kind of Swargaloka, as an example. So I'm acknowledging this as per the way. I will wrap it up. So here is the final answer, final slide. Animals and other living beings can also achieve moksha, but it's a very rare occurrence. sometimes involves divine intervention by deities themselves, or an extraordinary act of self-control and higher consciousness that the animals demonstrate way beyond their physical limitations. And yeah, it is possible, very rare though, only through the human physiology you have a better chance to achieve moksha or intermediate Svargaloka, as we were talking. So this is what I feel is the basic common denominator explanation from Sanatana Dharma. I'm happy to give the floor to the next speaker, and then happy to answer any questions you got later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, so our next speaker will be Rabbi Michael Locker from the Jewish tradition. Rabbi Michael Locker is the second career rabbi, having been ordained at age 55 from the Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion in 2003. He is a physicist who spent his first career in alternative energy, focusing on wind, solar, geothermal energy. He holds undergraduate and graduate degrees in physics from Queens College, New York City, from the University of Illinois. Prior to his ordination from the HUC JIR, or the Reform Movement, and 39's Rabbinic Seminary in 2003, he received a Master of Hebrew Letters degree from the same institution. He is presently Rabbi Emeritus at Temple Ner Ami in Camarillo, California, the community rabbi for the Jewish Federation of Ventura County, and the scholar in residence for Temple Adat Elohim in Thousand Oaks. So let's welcome Rabbi Michael.
Minute. Mike. Okay. It's trying. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. It is a delight to be here. Terry, you have the right to remain silent.
Rabbi, you need to press something there.
Oh, I was still detecting the device.
Press down on the remote if your device is at
No, I disconnected my remote.
Okay.
We'll see. Oh, on the Samsung.
Yeah.
Okay, if your device is a PC. There we go. Okay, thank you. So it's a pleasure to be here. I was inspired by Terry with all the different answers that the other faith traditions have. In Judaism, the answer is no, yes, maybe, God knows. And we'll see the last slide is Sonia knows.
And is that with one Jewish person?
Yes.
Or- Okay.
That's,
fine.
yes. It's very famous, one Jew, three opinions. So, do pets have a soul? Do pets go to heaven? So, the simple and truest answer, as I mentioned, God knows. People often ask me, what do Jews believe about the afterlife? I have a class on my website about that, and my answer always is, I don't know, go ask them. Because Judaism is a religion not about correct beliefs, but correct actions. And that's I'll talk about that next month. But that's a very important thing to understand about Judaism. But I can address what Judaism teaches about the afterlife and do it often. So, what does Jewish sacred literature say about the afterlife? It says, the Bible says almost nothing about the afterlife. You can interpret certain sections and read into it, but directly it says very little. But the Bible makes a great distinction between animals and humans. And I think this is going to be different than from some of my colleagues speaking on this. Humans are made in God's image. Animals, like everything else in the universe, is created by God speaking them into existence. God says, let there be light. God says this, let there be light. But for the human, the first human, Adam, God actually fashions Adam from the Adamah, the earthling from the earth, and breathes into Adam, the breath of life. So there is clearly a distinction, and I would say a spiritual distinction and separation between human life and animal life. So I'm certainly not going to read all of this, but there are rabbinic commentaries, and some of them focus on the book of Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, where it says, in the fate of humans and the fate of animals, they have one and same fate. As one dies, so does the other. They both have the same life breath. Humans have no superiority over animals, since both amount to nothing. Remember, this book opens up with vanity of vanities, all is vanity, and the Hebrew word for vanity is hevel, which means a breath, nothingness. From the biblical discussion, this midrash deduces that just as beasts are fated for death and do not merit life in the world to come, so too the wicked are fated for death and will have not merit in the life to come, world to come. Later rabbinic writings, Rabbi Sadia Gaon, in a philosophical work, writes that an animal is ultimately compensated for the pain it goes through in life and death. So there's some kind of animal suffers, that animal will be rewarded in some sense. And the idea is in line with the statement of the Talmud that says, the Holy One, blessed be He, does not deprive any creature of any reward due it, though an animal reward is different than what a person will receive for doing the good deed of free will. This is not so different from I think, your discussion. Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, takes a different tack. According to the teachings of the Ari, very famous Kabbalist, he says animals do have independent souls and go to heaven. And they say, and sometimes a human soul may come back trapped, as it were, in an animal body for the purpose of some rectification. And again, this sounds similar to reincarnation and karma. If you haven't done so well, you may come back as a lower level animal. So the term animal soul appears in classic Hasidic work, but there it refers to the soul in us that has an animal nature, where our more spiritual souls have higher natures. So I then want to really go into the idea of what does Judaism say about how we treat animals. So the core principle is preventing cruelty. This fundamental concept forbids causing animals significant suffering, even if they aren't human, because cruelty reflects poorly on human character and shows disrespect for God's creatures. And we have a stewardship in Genesis. It says we have dominion, which means responsibility, not exploitation, requiring care and respect for all living things. And I don't have a slide on this, but I came across a mystical teaching that as animal souls are elevated toward the human, they go through higher and higher levels of elevation. And a kosher animal is a higher level of elevation than a non-kosher animal. So the laws about painless slaughtering of kosher animals, of course, Jews would not slaughter any other animal because that would be needless slaughtering. But the laws of painlessly slaughtering a kosher animal is a reflection that that animal may have a human soul that is growing towards actually being human in another incarnation. And I hasten to point out that Judaism is open to the idea of both resurrection, as is certainly Christianity and I think Islam, but Judaism is also open to the idea of reincarnation. And my understanding is Christianity and Islam are certainly not open to that idea. There's lots of laws. Judaism, we have lots of laws. And just some specifics are: owners must provide food, water, and rest for animals, even feeding them before themselves. I just came from giving a talk about Fiddler on the Roof, and before he sings the song, If I Were a Rich Man, Tevye is feeding his animals before sitting down to his own Sabbath meal. Animals must rest on Shabbat. You're not permitted to work an animal on the Sabbath, just like people, and cannot be muzzled while working in the field. If you have an animal that's harvesting grain, it would be cruel to put a muzzle on that animal when it's going through a field of food and not able to eat. You're not allowed to harness animals of two different types, with one being much stronger than the other. And in terms of rescue, it is permissible, even required, to violate the Sabbath to save an animal in pain and danger. So that there's a tremendous amount of respect for animals in Judaism, but there's a difference between human life and animal life. So slaughter, the Torah forbids slaughtering a mother animal and its young on the same day, which is sort of an interesting take on this. And kosher slaughter aims to be as humane as possible. You're not allowed to maim animals. Prohibition exists against causing bleeding or injuring animals unnecessarily. And no unnecessary use. Using animals for labor or transport must be done carefully, ensuring their well-being. These laws extend to modern pet ownership, emphasizing that pets are beloved creatures deserving of care, with some Jews even creating rituals for them. So I have heard of people having a bark mitzvah. And I won't necessarily endorse that. And certainly people wanting to have cemetery, funeral rites for animals, and saying prayers that we would reserve for people to animals. I would say Jews do that. I don't know of any rabbi who would endorse that idea. The connection between treating animals well and treating people well remains a central theme. This is an interesting book that I happen to have, The Animal Kingdom and Jewish Thought, and it specifically addresses 65 different species. I list, and there's like a page or two on each of these species and how it's treated in biblical sources and other sources. I'll just comment that dogs are not treated very highly in the Bible. The references to dogs are generally negative. I think I'm actually going to finish on time. And now, from a higher authority, my wife Sonia assures me that pets do have a soul and do go to heaven. And if I come back as an animal, I would like to come back as one of Sonia's pets. Because Sonia has 3 other mammals in her pet family other than me. She has a horse, she has 2 cats, and it's not clear where I stand in the pecking order. So actually, since I have a minute, this is so rare. What is not rare is me having a song about all of this. So I was once called upon to do something to bless animals. And there is no blessing in Jewish, well, there is one, but only if you eat the animal. There is a blessing that you say before eating an animal. But I thought I would fill this with a song. It won't surprise some of you who know me pretty well. And here it goes. How do you bless a kitty that is Jewish? Or a dog with a waggly tail? I'd like to find a blessing that is newish. Don't worry, I didn't invite the moel. Moel is a Hebrew word meaning ritual circumcision. Our pets are the ones that really love us, even when we're not looking our best. So we pray to the one that is above us, that our dear furry friends will be blessed. God, give them long life and keep them healthy. Please keep them away from disease. When we're with our pets, we're feeling wealthy. Thank God there's no blessing for fleas. Thank you.
Oh, boy. Top that, Imam.
I get lots of requests about my songs, but I do them anyway.
Thank you, Rabbi Lalka. Let's give him another round of applause. At this point, we will invite the speaker for Islam, Mohammed Shoaib Mehta, is an imam at Islamic Center of Conejo Valley in Thousand Oaks, California. Imam Mehta holds a degree in interpersonal and organizational communication. He has also memorized the Quran, that's admirable, and has a degree in Islamic jurisprudence for Arabia Islamia, Johannesburg, South Africa. Through his writings, Imam Muhammad Shoaib has contributed to the discussion of issues relating to Muslims in the West, and is an ardent about presenting contemporary Islamic thinking without letting go of core Islamic concepts and principles. He lectures extensively to students and secular groups, with key issues being the area of personal reform, social reform, protecting the environment from continual abuse, social justice, and the need for continual intercultural and interfaith dialogue. Let's give him a good...
Well, thank you very much for having me for this event, and I think it is very important, especially the topic that we have, for one very primary reason. There is a lot of stereotype, alternatively, not so good opinions out there regarding how people of faith treat one another, number one, and how people of faith look at animals in general. If you ask the masses out there, they will say, all these faiths, all they talk about is God, God, God. But what is their relationship with that which creates a better bonding between ourselves and that given entity? Let me give you a specific example. If a person never had an animal, and you tell them you care for dogs or don't care for dogs, or care for cats or do not care for cats or rats, or the dog and the cat and the rat, or whatever that song is when you were a kid, it just doesn't make sense to them. They say, you know what, I don't understand why animals are so important to you. And I was one of those folks as well, until I had a pet. And not only that, when that pet died, it's like as if you have lost a part of yourself. And at that point you realize, when the topic is sent, do dogs go to heaven? When you look at it from the perspective of a pet owner, it all begins now to add up. Now we can go into text upon text, what the Quran says, what the tradition says. I'll just share with you a few. At the time of the Prophet of Islam, there were some young boys, they were playing with the bird's nest. And you know exactly what boys are going to do when they see a bird in there. They're going to go and take out that bird and start playing with it. Well, guess what you think the mother began doing of that bird? She began frantically going round and round and making a sound that wasn't very pleasant. And the Prophet of Islam, upon seeing this, he got very, very upset. He says, how dare you do this? How dare you do this to this given pet? How dare you give pain to the mother of this given animal? Then there is a woman in Islam that talks, there's a tradition in Islam that talks about a woman of the past faith, not going to mention what faith, etc., but regardless, and that is also authenticated, what faith, etc., but that's not the relevant thing right here. She did some things that were not very, very moral. And as she was walking once, she happened to see a dog that was panting. The dog was panting, and she realized it was thirsty. So what did she do? She took off a boot, not the fancy ones you folks wear today because you'll never be able to do this, but regardless, she took off a boot, she latched on a rope or something to it, and threw it down a well, collected as much water as she could, and quenched the thirst of the dog. And as a result of that, God said, inspired this statement to be made, that she now will become a woman of paradise. Now, it's not that it takes away all the bad she has done, but God is showing us through this tradition that if you take care of other entities, then God will also take care of you and I. And as far as the previous two guests are concerned, now you'll see a weave that is taking place between all the faiths generally. With me precisely now answering the following question before I go on any further: do animals have a space in heaven? And before we answer that question, we have to realize God created humans and have given them a certain type of understanding. We can distinguish between right and wrong, etc., etc. Hopefully, you wouldn't think of humans being able to distinguish right and wrong with what's going on in the world, and has been going on in the world for the past 3 decades, but we'll assume that they can. Having said that, when you compare humans to animals by nature, animals are very, very instinctive. I mean, if you ever had a chick, for example, as in chicken, then you realize from the time they are born, they have certain things that they do that allows them to survive. That applies to chicken, it applies to goats, it applies to sheep, pretty much we will say all animals. And that's the way they live their lives and they move on. As far as humans are concerned, much more is expected of you and I. That is why we are called, there's a phrase called mukallaf. Mukallaf means that which can be held accountable. As far as an animal is concerned, it lives in accordance to quote unquote its pre-genetics, that which has been programmed into it. It lives its life and thereafter it moves on. Having said that, we believe, now it's not that, by the way, I'm jumping a little bit ahead. It's not that they don't have access to heaven. Their heaven is already in this earth under the following condition. We have to treat them, that's what the Prophet of Islam says, when you are riding your animal and you are going wherever you go and it happens to see a lot of greenery, then what do? He said in the tradition, stop your animal, let it enjoy, and thereafter go back and do what you need to do. When the Prophet of Islam saw an animal that was very, very thin in nature, he got very upset at his owners. He says, what are you doing? What are you doing to this animal? God has, because of that animal, in fact, it comes in the tradition of Islam, it is because of the youth, because of the elderly, meaning those that are, well, none of you are elderly, so don't worry about that. But anyway, but you get what I'm saying. Because of the youth and because of the elderly, and number 3, because of these things that he pointed deaf and dumb. That means you're calling them deaf and dumb. But it is because of these 3 entities God accepts your prayer and my prayer. And if you abuse these 3 entities, children, the elderly, and the innocent obviously in that category, and animals, then basically you are calling upon wrath upon yourself. So as far as this word is concerned, treat them with magnificence, treat them with love. And I've got to say, many countries that I've seen, they pride certain animals. Western countries, they are known to take care of the dogs and the cats, as well as other animals as well. Turkey, for example, somebody sent me a video once, and how Turkish folks, actually people in Turkey, that make it a habit of going out daily and feeding the cats in the given neighborhood, etc., etc. So as far as this world is concerned, let them enjoy. Now what happens in the hereafter? There is an animal that is called qitmir. Qitmir is a phrase in the Quran. What happened was, there were these young boys, they were walking and they were having a good time, and all of a sudden the ruling was passed, if anyone does not follow the king of the place, they are going to be killed. So these boys said, the king wants us to follow him, but we want to follow God. So they decided, they had the dog with them, and they went into a cave and they slept away for good. However, God loved these young men so much, or these young individuals say, not because they only believed in God, but because of them taking care of the given pet. God gives a guarantee that in paradise, if you were to see an animal, it will be obviously that given pet. There's a second part. What is heaven? Heaven is you going to a space and having all the restrictions of the world let go so you can enjoy. That's the purpose of heaven. If in heaven you're going to be restricted, no, you can't have your favorite dog and you can't have your favorite monkey, then why am I in heaven? So we learn as Muslims that because they are not held accountable, they don't go through a test, so to speak. And because they don't go through a test, their paradise in this world, as far as the hereafter is concerned, should you want your favorite pet back with you, compared to all the other beautiful things that are in heaven, by all means go for it and knock yourself out. You're getting all the animals that you wish. This also ties in with what a point in which the Rabbi made as well, and we have a portion of a point that he has made. On the day of judgment, the following will take place. God will call each one to account. how I've treated my children, how I've treated my family, how I've treated my community, and I'll be held accountable. Likewise, there's a tradition of the Prophet of Islam that says the following: even a goat will be called forth, and it will be asked the following: why did you butt the other goat without any reason whatsoever? So there is a point that is made that even animals have a form of accountability on that hierarchy, but at the end of the day, that level of accountability will never be like you and I. Therefore, it's not that animals are not allowed into paradise as much as you wanting those animals to be there with you. And of course, heaven being heaven, you will have access to all your favorite pets. And if you did not like an animal, then you can even say, God, they may be here for someone else, but I don't want to see that pet. And God will say, by all means, I'll blind you to that, because after all, this is heaven. Thank you all. God bless you.
Three chairs for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. That was very interesting to hear all the different views, and I was pretty delighted to hear that in every tradition, actually, they have this sentiment of, being kind to animals and looking after animals too. Not just humans, like treating each other nicely, but also treating the animals with respect. And because animals, as far as I'm concerned, they have feelings just like us, right? It's not like if you take a knife and start, cutting an animal, they won't scream. They scream just like how we would scream, right? So they have feelings like this. They have consciousness, but they are all in different levels of consciousness. And I think that's what all three of the speakers agreed. In all tradition, you respect and honor that you don't unnecessarily hurt any animal, but they have different levels of consciousness. So we will begin with questions and comments or feedback from the speakers to one another. And if any of you have a question for Rabbi Mankaloko, Hari Patulu, or Imam, if you have a question, comment, or anything to make to one of you, each other, then please do so now. Otherwise, we'll open it up to the crowd.
Yeah, I have lots of questions. What a surprise.
As usual.
So, first in the Hindu tradition, you spoke about, if a tiger kills a deer, that's okay.
It's his nature.
Right, but not the reverse. So it makes me wonder, at what level does I think your tradition is vegetarian. So
some of the Hindu traditions
But-
are vegetarian.
but I have incisors. And humans, by our genetics, are omnivores, both carnivores. So I'm curious, so our nature is to want both meat and vegetarian. So would you say we can control the meat part of it and only be a vegetarian?
There are plenty of various traditions that have different opinions on it.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about one Jew and three opinions. We are talking about 300 Hindu opinions with one Hindu. Anyway, so the short answer is the most common answer is when you eat in the look at the food chain, the more closer you are to, let us say, arbitrarily the sunlight. Sun is the source of all energy. Like if you are eating plants, when you take one part of the leaf, or if the fruit falls down, you are not hurting the tree or a plant. But once you go on a higher level of the plant kingdom, animal kingdom and stuff, where, let us say, slaughtering an animal has its own repercussions in the karmic concept. And the moment you eat that kind of food away from the sunlight, as one example, you are more or less taking on the karmic aspect of the killing. Now, I also told an example of we are all living in Arctic and there's nothing else growing. So it's a survival mechanism. Then the incisors, the teeth, all your example comes into place. So it comes up with some common sense. Is it truly needed to kill something to eat versus not hurt other animals in this aspect, and then go for your own fulfillment of energy? So that is my short answer. Okay. But there are some traditions within Hinduism which are have a place where as part of the rituals they do consume meat, But it may not be famous right now. Hinduism evolves, but there are some traditions in, like, even if you are in a tropical environment where it's lush green forest, but there are certain family traditions that demand that you do consume meat, especially in the seaside. As an example, they do consume fish as part of the ritual food. But generally speaking, it is to avoid karmic ingestion as much as possible, not just in eating, but in other aspects of life too.
I'll try and just ask the Imam one question and then control myself. You gave examples of a number of stories. The story of the bird and the story of putting a book down the well. Are these from the hadiths, or is this in the Quran itself?
Yeah, those are the hadith, the tradition of the Prophet that has been outlined that, and the one about the dog and the boys going in the cave.
Yeah,
that is.
you said that. That one's in the
That
Quran.
one's from the Quran. So.
Yeah, and actually, one of the stories you mentioned reminded, and you said that God recognizes how the boys cared for the dog. There's a tradition, also an oral tradition, not in the Bible, but our equivalent of the hadiths would be Midrash and Talmud, of why God selected Moses. And one example is there's a story when a small goat or sheep ran away from the flock. God saw how lovingly Moses cared for this. It wouldn't surprise me if that's in the Quran, but how lovingly God saw how loving Moses was to return him to the flock. And in effect, God said, I like that guy.
Yeah, I think you made a very good point about the story as well. The key takeaway is, if paradise is what we are seeking, then look to feed that which is most vulnerable. And that also goes with, as I'm hearing right now, from the karmic aspect, that if you do the opposite of that, you are capturing that negativity. And if you do the positive, then you are not only presenting positivity, but you are also getting yourself extra credit points to give you a lot of benefit, not only in this world, but also in the hereafter. That is why many people cannot understand, and this happens, I think, more in America than anywhere else that I've seen, where a person would leave $10 million for his pet. And people go, but why did that actor leave $10 million? He's leaving his mother starving, he's leaving his children starving, but he's giving that pet $10 million. Why? Because the comfort that vulnerable creature is giving you and the loyalty is giving. And by the way, I don't want to get into this, but there are people that will prefer to have, and you know the stats out there, they'll prefer to have a relationship with a cat and a dog than sometimes even a human. Why? Because of the love that sometimes you feel that can be reciprocated. So when the mention is made about Moses and how he will assist in that given animal from going away, well, God is not just looking at an animal going away. That could have been the most vulnerable animal on that given day. And if he gave assistance to that, then why can't God give assistance to the individual that is doing that? In other words, God is saying, if you as a human can be merciful to a creature, why can't I as God be kind to you? And that's the lesson that we are drawing, I think, from these discussions. At least that's what I'm feeling.
I have more questions, but I'm going to control myself.
I do have a more scientific evolutionary question, both looking back in the past and in future. So what does your traditions talk about, either the creatures that went extinct long time ago like dinosaurs, or those that were caused by humans recently, last 1,500 years ago, or when humans do clone something or they mix two species genetically using genetic engineering, does your religion treat them differently from naturally born animals?
Yeah, so I think in Judaism, I don't read anything about that. Basically, Judaism addresses science as science, and I would say sort of ignores, maybe the mystical traditions deal with this, but generally Judaism is focused on what you're supposed to do. So you have lots of laws about how to treat this animal, not necessarily what is the status of the animal. I'll tell you sort of a really interesting Jewish issue about animals. They now are starting to grow meat cells on substrates. So this was never an animal. This was cells harvested from an animal and is now grown. And there's a controversy in Judaism, and I think in the world of vegetarianism as well, as to whether they are meat. Because and there are rabbis who will say it's not meat, which means you can have it with milk, and artificially grown pork is not pork. Imam? So an interesting question for both of us is, can you eat pork grown on a substrate? Because it's not technically pork. But I would say Judaism is obsessed with those sort of nitty-gritty, I'm sitting down to eat, what can I eat, what can I not eat, how do I treat the animals? Yes, what's the nature of the soul of a cloned animal? Does God miss the dinosaurs? No clue.
Yeah, as far as previous speeches are concerned, this is a very, very good question.
Yeah.
There is statements that have been made from Quran and Hadith that they have been past nations, and from the Hadith itself, past creatures, and the way it describes it, that it is something that we have not seen. It doesn't necessarily call it a dinosaur, and I'm sure many other scriptures also allude to this.
In the Hebrew Bible, there's Leviathan,
Exactly.
and we're not exactly sure what that is.
Exactly, and the same thing happens over here. So there are those, but we don't dwell on it like how my daughter dwells on dinosaurs, Dad. I love dinosaurs.
Right.
And everything is dinosaurs for her, especially when they're around 2 years old. So yes, we do know that they were things of the past. What they were exactly, that is something that we do not know in detail. But the very important question you bring about is this cloning aspect. And forget about cloning. What many of us are now highly concerned about, the things that we have right now, this is humans for you, by the way, which I just cannot understand. You had people taking care of plants and animals the proper way. No, but we had to bring GMO and all those things into it. Okay, you bring all those things into it, you mess people's lives up, you mess people's health up. Those innocent creatures, even the cows, their udders are like bulging and bursting. Oh no, we got to do it because we got to feed people. So we have corrupted. After we have corrupted animals, now we are going into, let's create things in a lab to create a safer environment. Honestly speaking, from a religious perspective, we are playing with people's lives, and as the result of playing with people's lives, what goes around comes around. Our lives are all being messed up with diseases that we have not even heard about. We are getting it at ages that we never heard about. We are getting it, etc. So all these things, they somehow come back to haunt you. Now, coming back to the substrate matter, etc., there is one group that will say, if the DNA structure is that of a given animal, and it seems to be resembling that given animal, that at the end of the day you are what you eat, then it is best to abstain from. That's one opinion. Second opinion is, if you have other foods out there, and you are doubtful about this new industry, then avoid it until the matter has been resolved, and until then, eat that which is most healthy and most beneficial for your body. To the point, there is a tradition, and I haven't checked the reference of this, where it says avoid eating certain type of foods because your character will become like those type of foods. So if you are a person that just loves meat and that's all you can eat, well, then there is going to be an inclination that you'll become more, and I don't mean this in a bad way, animal-like in how you function. And if you look at us as people, the way we sometimes go after each another, the type of things we do, I wonder what we are eating, because you are what you eat. So more important to the question that was put forward, what about the substrates, etc. Yes, they are important, but it's best to avoid them because we don't have a conclusive response. However, out of necessity for a person has to consume, by all means, then life is better than death. That's the way we will go. And more than worrying about that, we should be more concerned with what we are doing right now with animals, whether it's dogs, cats, rats, whatever it is. I mean, we know what they do with rats also in labs. That's not the way to go about as a believer. So we believe that there has to be a more responsible way of dealing with animals on every level, not just eating, but scientific protocols and how they are fulfilled, etc., in every area.
So I would just comment, both as a religious person, as a scientist, again, focusing on human life, that it's not so simple. You know, my late wife died of Huntington's disease. My daughter died in February of Huntington's disease. I have 2 other kids who are affected by Huntington's disease and who will likely die before me. If they were looking for a cure by using rats, I would not hesitate to applaud that as a good thing. Not for the rat, but for human life. And then, but we get into this issue about, you know, I mean, there are chickens that can't walk because they've been genetically programmed to have such large breasts. I don't mean mammary glands, I'm talking about the meat, because the goal is to produce more meat, you know, for the kernel. And it's really an abuse of animals. So I would say, I absolutely agree with you. And by the way, no predatory animal is kosher. The only thing, particularly of land animals, only the vegetarian animals are kosher. So I think that and you know, that goes back to the Bible. So it's saying.
Yeah, but just to be clear, the rats, no, we have no issue with rats being used, as long as they're not being abused in the labs. Like how we've heard stories. And the same thing about the chicken aspect. Now, if the animal is, as I say, and I've said before, this is their paradise. Allow them to enjoy, allow them to live, allow them to have a healthy life. Not those turkeys for Thanksgiving. I mean, how do you give thanks when you have a turkey on the table that was abused? That's a separate issue altogether. But I guess that leads to that. Allow them to enjoy, and not to the point wherein, I mean, one is they cannot walk. Okay, we can understand that. But the conditions sometimes they live in, and I think every group is I can say to be held accountable for this type of behavior against animals in general. And that is something that we have to all work on, I think, as a people. Regardless of our faith, we always have those members of our given communities that can just care less. And that is very, very unfortunate, I think.
I once went to a vegetarian Thanksgiving where before the meal we fed turkeys, which I thought was perfect.
Imam, do you have any questions for the other 2? If you don't, then we can proceed further to open up the questions to the crowd over here. And I just wanted to say I really appreciated the answers that you give, and I really like the point you made about, you know, you are what you eat. You know, and like we say in Hinduism, the energy you take when the animals are taken to the slaughterhouses, and how terribly they are treated, and how they're screaming and yelling out of terror and pain. We say we take all that energy in us, you know, that kind of energy in us like that. So thank you for confirming that. Arash, you had a question?
Yeah, I have 2 questions, Ms. Okay. The first one is for Hari. In your slides, you brought up the concept of Svarga Loka, I don't know if I pronounced it correctly, and that was new to me. You said it's like between the death and the rebirth, it's a time to enjoy the karma you had from the previous life. The question I have, is it required to partake in that at that time? Like, for example, you said it's like you're withdrawing from a bank account. But would it not be better to say that there so that potentially you go to a higher plane? I'm just trying to understand the relationship of that and achieving moksha, and if there is any relationship at all.
Yeah. So in the order of things, where I explained the Svarga Loka in between birth and death, it's in our civilizational construct, every living being, all the way till the creator we call Brahma, not Brahman, but Brahma, has a life and death cycle. Everything dies. From a scientific perspective, even stars die. They get born and then they burst and die. So from an amoeba to Brahma, there is death. But in between those cases where you take a good deed and then you self-control yourself, do a lot of good things, but the moment you are given an opportunity to go and reap the benefits of it, if you go like, I'm in Vegas, let me go and enjoy, then obviously you're going to deplete your good karma and then you're going to come back. But there are people who are having so much self-control that even if they are in Vegas, they say, okay, my friends are going, I'm going to stick with my own discipline. I'm going to go to maybe Utah or Yellowstone, whatever I'm going. I'm not going to take an off-ramp to Vegas. then they go to their destination, which could be Brahma or even beyond, which is where moksha comes. So Swargaloka is not mandatory, but you can decide, okay, I have enough bank account, let me go and indulge myself. It's up to individuals, vasanas or the smells that they gather over many lifetimes. They say, no, this time I want to get rid of it and enjoy, come back again. So it's up to individual atmas to decide.
Okay, that makes sense, thank you.
So they decide after they die.
So once the organic body at the just before death, the lifetime of, if you keep thinking about, let us say, I want to be the next president of the United States, and you keep thinking that vasana, that smell, equivalent word is smell, that your atma takes in, you are going to be in a state where I want political power. I'm just abstracting President of the United States here. I want political power. It could be a city councilman or whatever it is. So the next birth will be, they will be taking birth with an intention from childhood to exercise power, even from the school board election all the way till their death in the next life. So it's how what you think is needed at the moment of your death of the last life is what defines your next birth.
And you have choice in that, which I think is,
Yes.
that's very.
You get good decisions and you stick to what the scriptures tell you. Then at the end of the life where your senses are failing, but your muscle memory will not ask you, no, I want political power, I want 100 tons of gold or whatever else you are secretly looking at, it won't come to you. Your muscle memory will always be a good citizen of the land, and then you will get a good next birth. And that could be the Swarga for that. Yeah.
Okay, you had another question?
Yeah, sorry, if you don't mind. Rabbi Locker, in the beginning of your talk, like the second slide, maybe the third slide, you said, you were talking about like how God created animals, and you said there said some others would disagree with you in that. And was that what you were talking about? That God created animals, that some others would disagree with that?
I don't
Or that
remember.
maybe they would disagree with the fact that God created animals through his speech, or I was trying to
No,
understand.
I don't recall saying, I mean, the Hebrew Bible is just very clear
Okay.
that in the opening chapters of the first, in the opening verses, actually, in all the verses of Genesis 1,
Yeah.
God speaks things into creation.
Sure.
Light, animals, creepy crawling things, and so on. And so God says, let them swarm, God says, let there be light. But when it comes to the human, there's actually a story in Genesis 1, 26 or 27, where God says God fashioned the man in God's image. So that's unique. And then in the Garden of Eden, another telling of the story of creation, God literally is in the clay and fashioning the human and blowing into the human's nostrils the breath of life. So it is clear in the Hebrew Bible that the creation of humanity is separate and distinct and at a higher level than the creation of other animals.
Okay. But,
And-
all right.
And I don't remember saying someone would disagree, but yeah. Sorry. if that
Anyone
wasn't-
else? Question?
Yeah, I have kind of two.
Terry?
One statement to say to you, Rabbi, is that I wish sometimes that we could go back to where we just ate manna. It would really.
Where we just ate manna?
Remember the manna? Yes, it was so wonderful. And nobody took more than they needed, right?
Well, we don't really know what manna was. They say it was like
could have been-
coriander, and there's midrash oral stories that it tasted like your favorite food. But anybody who's been on a diet, longs for other things to eat.
True.
But-
we were sustained there. I mean, it's-
And remember, the Israelites were longing for
That's true.
the fowl and the quails and the good old days in Egypt.
The onions and leeks.
Onions and leeks, and
Yes.
God sent so many birds that they eat so much it's literally coming out of their nose. I thought you were going to say eaten and be vegetarians again.
Well, yeah, that would be
That's,
very good. But I also want to say, the problem that we have for all of you to add the question too is that we have such a problem with people going out and hunting in Africa and all just for the sake of a trophy. What happens to the soul of that dear animal, and what happens to the soul of that person?
So what I would say from a Jewish point of view, you can't eat an animal unless it's A, kosher,
Right.
and slaughtered in a kosher way. That means definitionally you can't hunt. Because if you hunt and shoot an animal with a bow, or with an elephant gun, or with a trap or something, that animal cannot be slaughtered in a kosher way.
Right.
So hunting would only be for enjoyment of, at the pain of animals.
That's what I'm
So
saying.
hunting is absolutely not kosher. Interestingly, fishing is okay.
Yeah, wow.
Although I have to say, Sonia, we pass someone fishing, Sonia will cry,
Mhm.
seeing the fish flopping around in the pail. But because you're not required to slaughter fish in a kosher way, because they're gonna die before you get them to the butcher anyway.
Oh.
So in Judaism, you are allowed to fish.
Would that be pole fishing or net fishing?
I don't know that there's a distinction.
Okay, because,
You got some question?
But wait, did anybody else have a comment?
Yeah, I have,
What
let me
happens
answer.
What happens
Oh, yeah.
to the people's souls who do this horrible thing?
You want to answer?
No, God knows.
So as per Hinduism, trophy hunting is for sure bad karma, extremely bad karma. The person doing it is going to be in real trouble.
Yeah, and I would say that's true of Judaism too. It's a sin. It's a sin to mistreat animals.
Absolutely.
Imam, any response to
As
that?
far as Islam is concerned, trophy hunting, just for the sake, like how some people just do it for the head itself and leave the carcass behind, that is, you're playing with another creature, and that is something Islam is not in favor of. What Islam does not mind is a person did hunting and got to the animal before it died and ensured its quick, swift slaughter without gorging it and doing other wild things to it, like how some people have done that we have seen, which is part of animal cruelty. So yes, if the hunting is done in such a manner that as soon as the bullet is hit, or whatever, that person can pretty much be there to do the slaughter itself, to ensure.
Would that be halal?
That will be considered from that point. But if you shot it just for fun, and then, well, whatever happens, happens.
Right, for
No,
fun.
then it's not only not halal, not only is it forbidden, it's a major sin as well. And one should also remember that trophy hunting is more like a sport, and that falls in a category of the kids that were playing with that animal,
Yeah.
with that chick. They are playing with it, and it falls in that category. And sporting with animals is not good. That is why there's a group of Muslims that also believe that having pets that are enclosed is forbidden. Having a pet that is allowed to leave back and forth, depart, etc., not having them in cages like parrots, etc., that is allowed. But if they're in cages, according to some, that is pretty much forbidden, because this is their paradise that they enjoy.
Right.
But if they leave and they come back and they have that ability, then it's totally.
It makes me wonder about, I know in certain Arabic traditions, hunting with a hawk, is a big
Oh, yeah.
deal, but it doesn't sound kosher to me.
Yeah, as long as the hawk picked it up and brought it,
Yeah.
did not kill it, and is brought for you,
Ah.
then that's going to be, it's not the best thing, especially in those countries that are doing it, they have all other foods they can eat. Why would they do that?
Yes,
That's-
exactly. No, it's sport. It's
It's
sport.
Yeah,
Then-
a lot of people are into it.
That's not a
Yeah.
good thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I see there are 4 people with their hands up, so I was gonna, the first one I saw is Maheshwar, and then will be our host here, Keith and
Judith.
Yeah.
Well, I've sort of a conclusive question. First of all, I want to compliment all of you. You all have stressed from your own traditions how it's really important how we treat the animals. You've all said in so many words what we would refer to as there's karmic results. If you treat an animal badly, it's not going to go well for you. You've talked about how people are better nature. The doctors have confirmed that it's better to not eat the animals. If you look at what's going on in terms of feeding them, the environment is required to be, it's just ridiculous. You can make a 16 pounds of potatoes for 1 pound of meat on what the land's doing. There's so much evidence for it. So we're all in agreement about this, but here's where I want to ask a touchy question. You're all leaders in your own communities. But I don't hear, and we all agree this is important, but I don't really ever hear it being taught in these other traditions. And it seems to me that as leaders in these other traditions, we really believe this. We really need to be putting that into the conversation, or it's got to come from the pulpit. It's got to come from the leaders to remind those who are looking up to the leaders for guidance on how to live their lives. So I guess there's a question in here somewhere, is like, why are we not doing that?
So I will just speak for Judaism. There is a movement called eco-kosher, which would speak to not only which animals are kosher and how they're slaughtered, but how they're treated when they're alive. And there are certainly movements in Judaism to be vegetarian, but they're not major movements. In Judaism, if you raise the animal ethically and slaughter the animal ethically, that is kosher, which means permitted. Being a vegetarian is perfectly kosher, but you are permitted certain animals. And you know, biblically it comes down to the story of Noah, where basically God says, well, now I understand the nature of people and you're going to be able to eat animals. Whereas before, you know, in the Garden of Eden, you could only eat the fruits of trees and things, with one important exception.
Yeah, I just want to comment about your comment about the canine teeth. Actually, if you look at the physiology of a meat-eating animal like a tiger, a deer, which basically eats plants,
right,
you'll see that the human body, not only the teeth, but our digestive system, the way we chew, there's so many things that the human has more physiological compatibilities with the deer than the tiger. And if you think your canine teeth are so good, then go out and jump on the back of some animal and tear it to shreds with your teeth. You're not going to be able to do it.
I have trouble jumping on the back of a horse.
I mean, I'm just saying that if you actually look into that, you'll see that art, and we would say that the canine teeth are there because God is very kind, and he says, okay, if you want to eat the animals,
right,
go ahead, but then you're going to get cancer and all these horrible diseases, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I just said, we often think of dogs as pets. But I know in India, for example, there's 60 million stray dogs. And that becomes more of a sociological issue, I think. How does a culture deal with that? Because I think one of the side effects, I think India's got one of the highest rabies as a result. Yeah. And I was reading an article, they're trying to clean up the stray dog issue, but it's a real problem. So just something to...
there are some pet adoption centers for sure. Yeah. So I think we are mixing up the religious aspect of it versus the civic administrative problems of proper governance in a local level, state level. That is different. But when you do have stray dogs, or New York City's subway is famous for rats. What do we do with them? And they might also carry a lot of diseases, right? So it doesn't matter what the animal is. The administrative part, the governance part needs to be separated from this topic, is my humble opinion. If it impacts the human health, it is up to the civic administration to deal with it in a most humane way.
Thank you.
All right. Gene?
Yeah, Imam Matar, when you brought up the story of the boys tormenting the birds, that reminded me of something that I read in Deuteronomy, and I was very impressed with it when I read it. If you come across a bird's nest in any tree or on the ground with young ones or eggs, and the mother sitting on the young or on the eggs, you shall not take the mother with the young. Now,
read the next sentence.
I don't actually have it in front of me.
Okay.
No, I know.
No, it's important. There's only 2 commandments in the Torah for which you are promised a long life, and that's one of them.
This is one of them.
This is one of them, and the other one is honor your father and your mother.
Yes, yes, and I don't have it in front of me, but I was very impressed because yes, I do remember that part of it. Now, Hetty, I don't mean to leave you out of this particular thing because I don't know enough about your belief system to really comment, but the comment I think would all of you would be involved with is that whether or not an animal has a soul and go to heaven isn't the primary focus of anybody's traditions here. It's how we treat each other while we're here, and that specifically includes animals that we have dominance over. So we have a higher responsibility for the way we treat animals. Is that seem to be fair?
Yeah, so from the Hindu perspective, slightly disagree. It's not just, as I was explaining, every living being has Atma. It has the essence of the cosmic consciousness, Parabrahma. So to do anything to disturb that journey towards liberation, it will invite bad karma. So as a Hindu, and you can take to the extreme where my fellow travelers called Jains, and Tim here can validate, there are some traditions in Jainism where they close their mouth, not for COVID, but way before COVID came, they had these face coverings, and they even sweep the footpath in front of them by mistake. They don't want to either ingest bacteria in the air or step on insects. That's the extreme case of making sure there is no karmic impact, even inadvertently, indirectly impacting your journey. So, so the disagreement is not just the animals. We have dominance. Even if they, let us say, the scientists decide and they have conclusive evidence, they have a living form, non-carbon living form in Mars or wherever else in the universe, they also have an essence of Parabrahma in them, and we should not be tampering with their karma.
Very good. All right, thanks.
I would wonder, would the Jains or Hindu tradition have an issue with you brushing your teeth because you're killing all the bacteria? And I'm actually being serious about this.
Not sure about Jains, but Hinduism.
Don't remember.
No, because I often talk about the difference between murder and killing.
Yeah.
We kill all the time. Murder is the only
I know the monks sometimes probably would not have a problem with taking an antibiotic. So
okay.
that would be the closest answer.
Mass killing.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
All right, Judy.
I've really enjoyed tonight. It's been great. And this is a very practical question. You said, the Hindu religion, you said that animals don't really go to heaven except, for unusual. Now, I was, in that instance, if a dog dragged a kid from a burning building, does that give it more?
There's kind of an extreme case, statistically speaking.
Right.
A black swan event, if you are into statistics. So, so there are cases where animals do extraordinary things, either by their own instincts or a deity has intervened in space-time fabric, and the animal has a get-out-of-jail card way before its time. But technically, human physiology gives the best probability of the discrimination.
Right. No, I think everyone
You just made me realize, I hope I'm in heaven with my wife Sonia, but she has so many animals and pets over the course of her life. I am going to be even lower on the pecking order.
I just wanted to add to like what Judy said in terms of Hinduism. It's not so much the body for us. The body is just like changing old clothes.
Right.
The most important thing is the soul, what we call Atma.
Right.
So the soul of the dog, especially through some special mercy of the sages or something like that, that may be an opportunity. The soul goes into the spiritual world, but where we're talking about the highest level of spiritual kingdom, what we call the Goloka Vrindavan, there's no that particular species of dogs or something like that. There's animals like swans, peacocks, and things like that, but not cows will be there, the higher consciousness animals like that.
Yeah, I realize that, for all of us it's our souls.
Right, so the soul, it's really about the soul going back to, it's not so much about the body for us. The main thing is who we really are For Hinduism is the soul.
I have a mega question which probably deserves its own panel. And that is, what is the purpose of your life? I think we did one on this.
The meaning
But
of life.
So as I listen to a Hindu tradition, the purpose of your soul's journey is to get out. I would say, and my understanding, and there's lots of folks in the room that can correct me on this, in a Christian tradition, my sense is it's to be in heaven with Jesus enjoying paradise. I would say in a Jewish tradition, it's to make this world a better place because we so appreciate the gifts that God has given us. We're not quite sure what happens in the next life. I sort of suspect Islam is a little bit of both, but I'm not sure. But I think that's, to me, the mega question. What is the purpose of our soul in this world?
So that's a question to put on the survey, so we can possibly think of having a panel.
No, we could do that.
So are we running out of time?
We are, it's
Because I think
8:30. One question, quick.
Yeah, so my faith has a distinction between murder and killing as well. What would your traditions have to say about having to put an animal out of suffering?
Oh, euthanizing an animal.
Yeah.
I would say Judaism is very much against suffering. And even with a human life, if a person is dying and the only purpose of medical treatment is to prolong the death, then you don't have to treat the person. There's issues with active euthanasia. That would be actually another interesting topic. But certainly, my understanding is if you have an animal that's suffering, you can certainly, you would be obligated to end the suffering.
So again, the Atma that we are talking about, whether it's animal or a human condition we are talking about, based on your authority in that situation. Let us say you are the child of a parent suffering and you have the legal authority, you make a decision, fine. If you are the doctor with active participation from the relatives of the patient, yes, you can do that. But what we don't want is bad karma from taking a decision where you have no authority to take a decision. Yeah.
Or for the wrong reason. If it's,
or for the wrong reason.
Interestingly, in my movement, physician-assisted suicide is okay in Canada, but not in the United States. And and this is a religious decision. And the reason is in Canada, because medical care is available to everyone and won't impoverish someone, the financial aspects of prolonging life are not going to guide the issue, whereas in this country it can very much guide the issue.
Thank you. Imam, did you have a response? And then we need to conclude. So.
In the essence of time, I'll just keep it simple. When it comes to human life, after a major surgery or something of that nature, the person is given the first choice, or the family is given, is that when the person comes back to consciousness, what direction is going to take. The doctor feels it's best to pull the plug, then that's what they will do. If the doctor feels that they should continue living, even though their health is not very good thereafter, highly deteriorated, you cannot take away that person's life. Because now you have given life preference over death, when death could have been an option based on the circumstances. That's the first thing. So as far as human life is concerned, that's going to be a little of a challenging, but we can discuss it later on. As far as animals are concerned, whatever is to be decided by the authorities themselves, that animals in a given situation, when they are going through certain things, this is how the decision made, and we have to respect that. But just to go about killing animals arbitrarily, how some people do as a sport, now that is a major no-no.
Thank you. I do want to conclude, and I know that Bill wants to get going here, and we're grateful to be at Alma Via, but I had a memory tonight. Many of you don't know that I was a hospice nurse. I was a hospice nurse, and I have a memory of a gentleman who was coming onto hospice and I was signing him in, but he was actively dying while I was doing that, and he had a loving dog present with him. And the memory is, when that dog died, when that person died, that dog was in a different room and began to howl. The dog knew in its heart and soul that that person, his loved person, was dying, passing, going someplace else. There was a true connection. So the idea that animals have souls, to me, is very true. And I want to thank our speakers tonight. You were amazing. And the moderator, thank you. And Bill, thank you. Please turn the survey in. And again, I will say, as I said to Rabbi Mike, put that idea on the survey. If you have ideas for a forum, please let us know.